Hello and welcome. It's Jennifer here at Peacock-Smith. Today we're going to be covering a Velamints tin. Velamints come in all kinds of sizes, so today we're just doing this one, which I have labelled Velamints 01, so that later on when I'm decorating you know what I'm talking about. So you're going to need your pattern, which is free for all my subscribers, and of course subscription is free. You can check out my WordPress blog or my Facebook page. Just look up either. Details will be below here for your free pattern. So you'll need your pattern, you will need glue or Mod Podge. You can watch the video on the difference if it bothers you, and your empty Velamints tin, and just a piece of paper. So I have already cut out my pattern shapes. I have then traced them onto normal white paper and torn them out. I haven't finished tearing out the last one so that I can show you how I do it. So basically you get your pattern, you cut out the pieces of the pattern once you've printed them, you land up with your pieces, you put them down and you draw around them, and then depending on whether they say cut, this is a cut edge which is straight, or tear. It's really easy to do with a ruler. I'm going to move that out the way. It's really easy to do with a ruler. And what you really want is to land up with none of the, you can trace it in pencil. I've just done it in dark pen so that you can see where I'm tearing. You're tearing just inside the line. Just keep turning it a little bit more. A little bit more. Ooh, this is going to be hard, this last bit, because that's so thin. But if I hold it down really firmly, hopefully it should still work. Nearly. They don't have to be straight when they're torn edges, remember? In fact, we might like them to be nice and fluffy. The reason we tear some edges and some are straight, if you imagine, this is totally over exaggerating here. Where's a normal pen? I think you can just see on this one. If this is the surface that we're working on, if you have paper that's cut, it is a sharp edge, totally exaggerated. If you have a piece of paper, same width, that's torn, the fibers pull apart and your edge becomes fluffy. So as you layer upon layer upon layer, you don't have these sharp edges, you have soft edges. So as you layer your paper over and over. So sometimes we need a sharp edge, you'll see in a minute why, and sometimes we need a torn edge. And so for the outside of your Velamints, oh, that's torn nicely. You can see on the, it's taken quite a big piece out, but on here it's still mostly there. That means it's near the edge, it's very, very thin. You'll see why. That's important when we get there. So there we go. I have my 3 pieces to cover my Velamints tin on the outside. Right. So here goes. Leaving it shut, we have 2 sharp edges. We have a sharp edge here and we have a sharp edge there. If you go over the edge, it won't close, and if you go onto this space, it won't close. So we are only going to go from there down, and we are only going to go from there up. So therefore We don't need a fuzzy edge here. We need a sharp edge. Okay, so we do this in pieces. We start here at the back. This is where the patterns come in. It's easy to just kind of draw it out, but the thing is you actually need these little dugouts. This little dugout is going to go around that hinge, because that hinge opens and shuts. So we actually need it to go around there. And so we are going to start off with, be very careful not to go over the edge, otherwise you will glue your hinge shut. Now notice there's a dip on each side of a Velamints tin. I put quite a lot of glue in there, and the reason for that is we want to make the paper in there quite soggy, so that it actually changes shape and goes in that dip. I've got a bit of glue in there, so we're going to have to make sure it doesn't go anywhere. It's really important on your first side that you get it dry before we go any further, and the reason for that is it slips and moves as you do other sides, and we really, really, really want this to not slide. See, it's already slid. So we're going to be really pedantic, and we're really going to hold this down. You can see I've been doing crafty things that mean my hands are a bit grubby and not washed. And the glue picks up everything, so this is not going to come out very white, but we're going to paint over it. We almost never leave it plain white, but still, I highly recommend having very clean hands to do this. This is the bit where patience really is a virtue. It won't show on the fast forward version, but on this version, we're actually going to wait. And in fact, I'm going to go put that out in the sun. No, I'm just going to fuss and fiddle. But I really want that to not move. I think that's not moving anywhere. Yep. Okay, then we're going to hold it down. And do the next side. Lots in the middle there again, and being really careful not to go over the edge. Doesn't matter if you go over that edge, but you don't want to get it in here. As a precaution, we're semi-regularly open and shut just to make sure we aren't sticking that in there. Now, we're also pushing, because we want to push this all the way around. So without tearing it, we want to, and keeping that gap really even, we want to push it this way. We don't have to be as pedantic waiting after the first one, because the second one is being held down by the first one, if that makes sense. It can't, the whole thing can't slip. And that takes us to the fourth and final side, and we're going to go over the edge. small overlap. And it should tuck nicely into there. Wipe that glue off. Now, you can see there's a rounded corner on each one. We're going to do 2 snips at each corner. One on the outside, one on the outside of each curve. Does that make sense? This is already done. Because it's the edge. Now in here, I'm hoping you can see it well. We're actually going to be putting the glue on the paper as well as the tin. Does that make sense? So that we can make it nice and soggy. Not over glued, but you can, when I'm brushing, I'm doing both and just making sure that I get all sides, and then I can do the middle. My brush has a stray hair. And very gently, actually I'll use the brush where you do that one, that one, oh sorry, that one, that one, followed closely behind by these. Now needs more glue in there. So you can be doing with this with newspaper or printer paper or anything you like. And really getting that bottom edge nice and flat. And then we actually give it a coat of glue on the outside. It will be absorbed into the paper wherever there isn't enough glue, and it will give it strength. The thing about PVA glue or Mod Podge is that they're actually very, very strong when dry. So I am now going to go and put this outside to dry before we do the lid. So I'll see you in a minute. Okay, we're back again, and this is fairly dry. It's been outside for about half an hour. I have been picking it up regularly and just pushing down on any sharp edges or bubbles that come up, and it's coming along very nicely. So we have our last 2 pieces of paper here left here. We're going to shut it again, but it's about that. It's about that wide. Oh. It's about that wide. And we really want the top torn. That's too wide. So I'm going to cut a little bit off each side. And then tear the rest so that we don't get a lump. don't go too far in, because when this opens, oh, I've landed up sticking that there. If that, when you open it, that bit goes inside. So you can see it's really pushing that up. So 1 piece of paper maximum on there. And really, it's nice to have, because if we're going to paint this, the paint will go wherever the paper is, whereas paint doesn't like sticking to metal. In many ways, what we're doing here is I'm going to put it here. It doesn't have to go all the way over. And again, this is a bit that I want to dry. I shouldn't have put glue on there. I'm going to do that to make sure that it's straight, which it is. I'm going to hold this dry as it's such a small bit. So there are many reasons while this is drying why we do a single coat first. You can build it up and build it up with layers and layers of paper mache with newspaper. This one I've covered in pages of a book. I haven't finished decorating it yet, and I've left the leaf green. If you do it white or newspaper, it means you can paint it. Metal doesn't like paint, it repels it. Even if you can get it to stick, it often chips. So a single layer of this makes it paintable, which is really lovely. I'll probably paint this one, but it also makes a really solid, firm foundation to cover the whole thing in much thicker paper mache, which means you can change its shape, you can add things to it, you can glue things to it. A paper mache base is a really, really strong base. That beginning bit is nice and dry now, so we can keep going gently round and round. Again, we're pulling it round. Paper expands when it's wet, and so if you push it in a direction, it becomes much flatter. It does shrink again when it dries, but you'll end up with a nice tight fit, which is really good. And the next one, I'm actually going to go around to that end. Which we can then tear off. You can see that gap where the lid finishes. Let's get a little bit wet there. I am going to put this in the sun again to dry, because I want this to be really dry before I go over the edge, because we're really going to be pulling quite hard, and you want this to be firm and happy. So it'll be a quick dry. It'll only be about 5 minutes till it's dry enough that I'm confident it's not going to move. Welcome back. We're nice and dry and nearly finished. So again, we're really getting the glue in the corner, and we're doing it on both surfaces, so we can get our paper a little bit soggy, which means it'll bend better. I should probably torn these corners in a couple of places while they were dry. Do that before you do the glue. dog having a hernia in the background. Do your corners first. Get them nice and flat, and then you can do the flat edges over. We're about to get very sticky fingers here. But this is why we needed that first bit to dry, because now we're really mushing, and we're mushing in. Everything's mushing in. Getting out air bubbles, you're mushing out glue, you're mushing out creases. Oh, there's a lot of blue in there. I put all the glue in the middle. As you know, we like those dents to be full of glue. And then we're taking this, and that goes in, and it should very nicely and softly merge quite nicely with everything else. Be very careful not to pull down too much, because we've got that other edge. Getting a bit dry, and then coat it in glue. Let it really soak in. You're going to be surprised at how thick this is, even being a single layer. It really is going to be very strong. This particular one I'm going to paint. That'll be in one of the next videos. But there we go. We now have a fully covered tin. Sign the bottom. Decorate the edges and the top. It can still open and shut perfectly. In fact, the next video will be lining it. But I'm first going to leave this to dry. I'm not going to shut that because, oh no, I can. Leave it to dry. Then we'll do the inside, and then we'll decorate it. But all the tins that I do, whether I do them with pewter, beads, pages of a book, they all have a single layer of paper first. You can go direct to your book covering, that is also only a single layer. But if you're going to paint it, you need a single layer. And if I do something pewter on the top, I first paper it as well. So there you go. Thanks for joining me, and I hope you enjoy all the other videos. Don't forget to subscribe, sign on, and I'll catch you soon. Thanks.